Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. I'm Jeiz Robles. I'm a cisgender, Asian, bisexual, neurodivergent woman, and my pronouns are she and hers. I am privileged to be working on something I'm ultimately passionate about: diversity and inclusion in the Asia Pacific region as IBM's marketplace diversity leader. When I'm not doing that, I'm working as a trustee for the board of the Philippine Financial and Inter-Industry Pride, as well as with the Philippine Business Disability Network, and advice for various civil society organizations for D&I within the region. Today, I will be talking about embracing intersectionality through various communities, including the neurodiversity community in IBM. In this session, we will talk about building a sustainable, inclusive environment through an intersectional lens. Intersectionality is the recognition that people aren't modular, that our identities are made up of many parts, and that one can't just deal with, for example, being Asian, being a woman, being LGBTQ, or having bipolar disorder, like myself. My day to day would be a composition of all this. To me, given how I'm spending most of my life these days on advocacy and work for DNI, being LGBTQ and being neurodivergent means constantly having to come out. Or to those unfamiliar, the experience we go through each time we talk about these parts of our lives to others. It's never a one-time exercise. It happens all the time, and so does the mental load that comes with it. As an LGBT plus individual, I came out to my parents, my siblings, my relatives, my classmates back in college, my teammates, even to an engaging Grab driver. It happens all the time, and each time, no matter how out I am, there are concerns about how it will be received. That was for majority of my life, and most recently, having been made aware of another part of me was yet another story of self-acceptance and constant revelations about myself. It was in 2019 when I had a depressive episode that prompted a series of sessions with my counselor. With my background in psychology, I've had some hypotheses about the things that I've been experiencing and that I may have bipolar. I was the type of person who's had a lot of energy in most times to the point that I'd literally dance when I'm in the office, when I'm in the mood. I had high standards when it came to the quality of my work and my team, which is, of course, expected of a professional, right? But what made it all different? The heartbeat. That's constantly more than average every single day. Imagine how seemingly simple things can affect you if you had that. I was diagnosed with bipolar 2, which is characterized by chemical imbalances in the brain that is manifested through rapid cycling between highs and lows or over time. I was more manic than I was depressed, and so started the journey to understanding bit by bit. It's been 3 years, and it was really difficult for me because I was brought up with certain standards. I was the eldest in a Filipino family where expectations of reliability and responsibility were constantly berated upon me, and for a time, even until today, there are times that I can't help but think that something's wrong with me. And that all that I've achieved is because I was neurodivergent, which, when you think about it, it shouldn't be a bad thing, right? But in a culture where counseling is not a norm, in a culture where medicines are cure for illnesses, where I need medicines to stabilize my mood, it's hard to think otherwise. Disability comes in many forms, some visible, others invisible, and bipolar disorder is classified as an invisible psychosocial disability falling within the realm of neurodiversity. I've said neurodiversity a few times now, and I've talked about this as part of my identity. Now, let me take a break from talking and let our other IBMers tell you more about what it really means to be a neurodiverse or neurodivergent IBMer. Please watch this.
What does it mean to be autistic, or to be neurodivergent?
To be told that you are too sensitive, too honest, too literal, to be misunderstood.
The complexities of being neurodivergent in today's world are multi-layered and confusing at best, leading to thousands being unemployed with devastating impacts.
At IBM, we decided to rewrite the rulebooks, break down traditional employment barriers, and to hire neurodivergents globally, like me.
And to support and accept the neurodivergents that are already here at IBM, like me.
To move beyond awareness into acceptance, and not only of autistics, but dyslexics, ADHDers, and beyond.
To respect neurological differences as any other human variation. To be equal.
To be equal.
To be equal.
To be equal. Today, with neurodivergent IBMers, like me, we can bring a new perspective.
To share our strengths and passions, and work with others who share our goals.
So we all better understand ourselves.
Together we know our own business better, inside out.
Develop advanced solutions on very complex platforms.
Across blockchain, on cloud, or within cognitive systems.
The truth is, our approach to neurodivergent talent has made IBM more agile, faster, better.
More human.
More human.
IBM puts smart to work with neurodivergent professionals.
In this summit, we have learned that neurodiversity is a concept where neurological differences are to be accepted and respected as other human variation, that no one neurological way of functioning is superior than the other. As a very young concept, there are still a lot of perspectives that revolve around this. I would often hear neurodivergent individuals preferring the mention of identity language first, for example, the use of autistic person rather than a person with autism. At the end of the day, it does depend on the individual. I will be very transparent to say, at this point of my self-discovery, as an individual with bipolar, I have not yet reached that comfort level where I can say I am bipolar. I am, like I said earlier, Asian, bisexual, neurodivergent woman, and these are parts of my identity that play a big role in my own person in the workplace. The same is true for a lot of individuals. Let's take a moment to imagine, and please indulge me by really imagining. In a region-wide culture and society where gender stereotypes and the dominant gender still exist, what does it mean to be a woman? Either a middle or senior manager going up the ranks, especially during this pandemic, being a caregiver, for example. What does it mean to be Asian in a multinational corporation whose headquarters is in the other side of the world? And what does that mean if that Asian is located at the headquarters versus if they are not? What does it mean to be in a decades-long term partnership that's not recognized by the state? The insecurities that come with this family's day-to-day life. Something happens to me tomorrow, God forbid, What happens to the life I've built with my family? And as we do our day-to-day, what does it mean to have a disability? Where while differences are said to be celebrated, the transactional nature of day-to-day work actually means set standards on measurements, KPIs that can sometimes not make sense just because they are what we are used to having. For example, productivity measures on working hours rather than output, leading by asserting and getting things done rather than motivating, which may mean sometimes accommodations which senior leadership may not necessarily be happy with. So, when we talk about intersectionality, we talk about how the neurodiversity community is often found more likely across various races, ethnicity, gender expression, generation, ability, sexual orientation, job roles, and bands, and the only way to reduce discrimination is by understanding how this intersectional nature of life affects each of us. And here are just a few statistics specific to neurodiversity. 1 in 20 individuals are neurodivergent and 1 in 50 are autistic. And we're talking about the known ones. By now, we know that neurodiversity is a relatively new concept, unknown to many that they have some form of it. Despite that though, several studies have already shown that there really is no significant cost to provide adjustments specific to neurodivergent people, and that neurodivergent individuals, when provided needed support, can be 92% more productive, can have higher job loyalty, and bring in significant new skills to the workplace. The more facets of diverse identities we have, the more challenges we might be facing compared to our, for example, neurotypical heterosexual counterparts. A lot of this can result to extensive greater rates of mental health challenges, and sometimes we will find service provider who specialize either in none of the areas the community is going through, or the best we can get is just one of those areas. For example, medical professionals and service providers that specialize in either just LGBTQ plus or autism or ADHD or bipolar or just one. Finding providers who know anything about adult autism, ADHD, etc. is difficult enough as most focus on children. And finding someone who understands those are extremely rare, which means multiple providers might be necessary. When it comes to communication, we also find functions that are not really experienced by others. How light, noise, smell, and other sensory factors may have an impact. Making appointments can be pretty straightforward to someone. To others, there's always that added anxiety when it comes to having to explain or having to be rejected for a request. Imagine this in the context of the workplace and not having that understanding. It's also not very common for neurodivergent individuals to know in the first place that the condition exists because of being less likely to seek support, and all this leads to poorer mental health and outcomes, which as a company we would want to support. All this aside though, we have to recognize the strengths that each of us may have that come with being neurodivergent. That includes different ways of thinking, sometimes fixation but important attention to detail, recognition of patterns, and the passion that's coming from deep interest, intense focus, and persistence. The outcomes of embracing this as part of the workforce can include unending innovation, retention, improved metrics, and revenue, not to mention thought leadership and inclusion. And so, when we try to find ways for us as individuals to contribute to making individual inclusive workplaces, consider the following. There are different ways of communicating. We still live in a world where assertiveness, directness, and clarity are valued, while That is not wrong. We have to recognize other ways of communicating, and that in some cases, it will require patience and focus to draw out what is really being said. To not judge someone as being rude or abrupt when they appear to be. Rather, be regarded as authentic and honest. There are varying ways to show honesty, empathy, and interest. It's not all about eye contact, and we have to know that. Otherwise, we can be judging an interviewee for lack of attention when the fact may be their brains have been built differently than ours and that it's not in any way less valid. For me, for example, it is psychosocial, considered as a disability, but it is totally invisible. I remember in the past there was a teammate who opened up to me saying that she has noticed that I had a demeanor where I presented to be constantly irritated with her, which I was completely unaware of. She even went on to say that she noticed how I worked with others and that I was different with them. I then went on to apologize and explain that I've been, at the time, exhibiting symptoms of hypomania and that they were unintentionally affecting her. Awareness for both me and the people around me helped extremely. I will not deny, in the past, I have passed judgment easily to people who think so differently. Understanding neurodiversity and the difference it brings to the table has made me not only a better DEI professional, but a better person in relating to others too. Now, I ask myself before I pass judgment. And this is why in IBM, we would foster a culture of conscious inclusion. We focus on outcome-driven goals that make an impact, from recognizing how corporate advocacy can make a difference in the lives of the community inside and outside of the company, to making every IBMer an ally of our underrepresented minorities, to making sure we champion diverse communities and support their day-to-day experience, and finally, making our leaders accountable to increase representation and inclusion. This can translate to different programs within and outside of the organization. What you see on this slide are various programs that we see leading industries have for each of the different communities, what IBM has. From leadership to development across communities to employee assistance programs, equal benefits, and community intervention. All of these we do alongside our communities and civil society organization partners that not only allow us to scale impact but also to continue to learn from each other. As a technology company, we also make sure to leverage this strength, and as for other companies in the industries to do the same. Work with what they have and where they're good at. For instance, accommodations provided can include hardware and software. Hardware, physical modifications can actually go a long way. Noise cancelling headphones, adjustable tables and chairs, both for those working from home or can be provided in spaces in the office as well. Software, text-to-speech, assistant, and vice versa, captioning in virtual meetings, sensory sensitivity in virtual murals or whiteboards are also used. IBM is also proud to have an accessibility toolkit which promotes equal access to applications, technology, or any digital design organizations are creating. These offer tools and resources to build offerings that are usable and delightful for people of all abilities. If you want to know more, you can look for that in ibm.com/able. Now finally, community-based technology. Technology can also be used to connect to other members of the neurodivergent community. It can be used to perform design thinking, to create empathy setting and ideation that involves the different communities. And we can even go outside, pre-hire, go to schools where we would mentor students through P-Tech and provide learning as well as online learning to prepare them for the workplace. All of these are managed in a specific program that exists for our neurodiversity community, whose mission is to build a competitively differentiated workforce that is basing on skills than anything else. Its vision to incorporate neurodivergent friendly hiring strategies into the mainstream so that it becomes the way everyone is hired, not just ND specific talent. As early as 2015, a BRG for our autistic community has already been established, which has grown to 3,000 IBMers and counting. IBM has also deployed hiring programs for the community, eventually creating a documentary and this neurodiversity program as of 2022. Supported by an executive council and an autistic task force, we continue to grow, hire, and develop neurodivergent individuals in the workplace. And what we learned is the importance of building awareness to increase acceptance and improve advancement for the community. By engaging our volunteers, we have increased acceptance that improves neurodiversity acceptance and helps HR or talent hire more neurodivergent people. A global community for neurodivergent IBMers is also there to support each other in a safe space. I'm personally part of this, and I'll be honest, if not for this safe space, I don't think I'll be here today talking about this topic. I would still be contemplating if I should talk about being neurodivergent. It has made me aware that what I have is biological, not a defect, but something others also experience, and that we can collectively embrace. That experience improve advancement of people like myself for opportunities and representation. And at the end of the day, experiences and empathy matter. So one of the things we would often do, and in workshops I would often help facilitate, is to build personas that represent the community in a very intersectional way. Take here, for example, Letty. In a room full of individuals wanting to learn and be more inclusive for various communities, creating an empathy map of their lived experiences can help with ideation. Understanding what we might be feeling, saying, thinking, or doing creates an approach that is community-centric. From there, we can attempt to come up with a strategic approach. We would be sure that we are taking into consideration actual lived experiences instead of what we just think are right as HR professionals or as business leaders. If you're interested to explore designing your culture in this way, I am a message away. Feel free to connect with me in LinkedIn. And so, as I end today's session, I do want to ask you, what resonated the most for you? I hope there is something you're taking home with you that you'll do right away after this session. Thank you so much for spending time with me, and I hope that you have a wonderful weekend ahead.